In this lesson, we're going to see how to create accessible forms by using ARIA. We'll have a look at 3 attributes which allow screen readers to provide more feedback for people with visual impairment so they can understand the purpose of a text box and which text boxes are required. So there are 3 attributes we're going to have a look at. There's an attribute called ARIA described by, ARIA labeled by, and ARIA required. In this web page, accessibleforms.html, in the first form, I have 2 text boxes where I enter an airport I want to travel from. Let's say I want to travel from Cardiff. And an airport I want to travel to. Let's say I want to travel to Oslo. And I want to travel within 3 days. Like so. So let's see how you can use ARIA described by and ARIA labeled by to help the user understand the purpose of these text boxes. The code is in a file called accessibleforms.html. I've opened it here in Komodo Edit. At the start of the document, I have several style rules just to make the example look nice. So let me scroll further down. So here's the first form. And the first form has a text box where the user enters the airport they want to travel from. And you'll notice the ARIA described by attribute. This links you to another element on the web page by ID. So here I have a span, and the span is from descriptor. So the contents of this text here can automatically be picked up by a screen reader and displayed when you enter into that text box. So with a screen reader enabled, as soon as I enter into this text box here, the screen reader would know that this is the text that it has to read out to the user to help them understand what that text box is for. And then likewise, when I tab to the second text box, the screen reader would display this text. So this gives visually impaired users an understanding of the purpose of the text boxes. Now the third text box uses a slightly different control, an ARIA labeled by attribute, where you can effectively build up a sentence or phrase. So you'll notice there's a label that says travel within, and that label is called range label. And then there's a text box where you enter the number of days within which you'd like to travel. And this text box is called range text. And then we have a span that displays range unit. So that could be days or hours or weeks. So we have controls called range label, range text, and range unit. And ARIA labeled by allows you to put those together to form a sentence. So the screen reader will announce the range label, followed by the range text, followed by the range unit in a proper sentence. So for example, if I've entered the number 3 in here, the screen reader would announce travel within 3 days. Like that, in a proper sentence that would make sense to the reader. Okay, so that's described the ARIA described by and ARIA labeled by attributes. Now we'll have a look at ARIA required. The second form has some text boxes. The color coding would suggest to a user with normal eyesight, clearly the first and the second text boxes are required. The third and the fourth text boxes aren't required. So let's say I type in my name and my email address. And let's say I don't bother putting in my home telephone number or my work telephone number. Let's see the markup for this form. So it's the same file as before, just a little further down. So we have 4 input controls. The first one has required. That's the standard HTML5 attribute. And I've set up a style at the top of the document so that the required fields are displayed in yellow. Let me just show you what that style looks like at the top of the document. So here it is on line 24. Input controls that have the required attribute will be displayed in yellow. So for a user that doesn't have visual impairment, they would clearly see which fields are required. But it's not so easy for users that do have a visual impairment. They don't know that the text box is yellow. So in that case, what I've done is, as well as applying the required attribute, I've also applied the ARIA required attribute, and I've set that to true. It's a Boolean attribute, true or false. That's picked up by a screen reader, and it would allow the screen reader to give some sort of feedback to the user. You have to enter text into this text box. Okay, so these are quite simple attributes. ARIA described by, to announce some text for a text box, and then ARIA labeled by, in order to announce a whole sentence comprising multiple labels and the input control, and then ARIA required which allows the screen reader to tell the user which fields are required and which ones aren't.